if you think about it, like having someone walk up to you with a briefcase of $1 million in it and hand it to you doesn't make you a millionaire. It makes you an individual with $1 million in a briefcase.
Right.
And so there has to be a crossover point where the individual begins to see themselves as somebody who is worthy of the money that they're holding. Because what happens is the self-image is a regulating mechanism, which means that there's a dial. Look at it like a thermostat.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Why Do I Suck as a Real Estate Agent podcast. I'm your host, Monte Reyment. My guest today runs a real estate company and a coaching platform called Infinite You. Kevin Yoder. He works with entrepreneurs on the part of the business nobody wants to talk about. He's the voice in your head, which is the voice in your head is the issue, right? So, Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Monty. I'm really happy to be here and dig into this conversation, how we can help everyone get better today. Let's do that. Let's leave everyone better off than we found them.
I love it. I'm excited to talk because you're a big mindset guy. I'm really excited to talk about that because I think the whole point of the Why Do I Suck as a Real Estate Agent podcast is really that. And it came from, at one point, I talk about this a lot on my previous episodes, but I had a young lady a few years ago. She was struggling. She was at that point in her career where she had some success, but then the roller coaster that happens early on for a lot of agents. And she came to me and just said, why do I suck at this? And I just I sat back and thought about it. And I was like, you don't suck at all. You're nowhere near sucking. It's just you need time and reps and just giving her that confidence to move forward. She's outstanding. She's still a really great agent. And so from that point forward, I was like, I got to start documenting this. And then it kind of rolled in and morphed into this. And so here we are with the Why Do I Suck as a Real Estate Agent podcast. But yeah, it's all about mindset. A little bit, I always like to start off, let people get to know you a little bit. So give us your backstory, how you got into real estate, and then how you got to where you are right now.
Yeah, we can start with how I got into real estate. Because it's easy to talk about that. A lot of folks got into real estate the same way I did. We kind of back into it. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know anybody that set off intentionally to be a real estate agent. I think most of us started off in other career paths and found ourselves really just not happy doing that thing. I'm sort of the same way. So I think I had 33 jobs prior to real estate. Yeah, I have a
perfect. Now you're a perfect real estate agent because you have to have a jack of all trades.
100 exactly. But we all kind of find our ways here in real estate from different paths. But mine was a criminal justice degree, which led me down the path of law enforcement, which led me into not wanting to do that, which led me into sales, and then from that I ended up here. Here we are, 26. In about a week, it'll be 26 years in the industry. So I can proudly say. Wow. I've been a real estate professional for 26 years. That's at least 4 different significant market cycles. So I've been a solo agent for a part of that, ran a high-performing team for the larger part of that. In the later years I've intentionally changed the model of my team to more of a lean model. Now with AI, of course, it's a lot more possible. And we're actually more profitable right now. But the intentionality of that, and I'll get back to the kind of behind the scenes of it in a little bit, but the model itself has evolved mostly by virtue of me deciding to build the coaching program. And it's taken me about, believe it or not, 4 years from start to where we are now, ready to launch. And some people might think that's a crazy amount of time to spend on something, but not when it means something, not when the impact itself is going to be significant. And it takes all of that and beyond what I ever imagined. And so I'm really excited for that. But the last 25 years in sales and leadership, Monty, I built and ran this top producing team, coach agents, actually all over the world, and trained salespeople from the outside. Everything looked successful. That was the same thing for me before I realized what I did. But I kept on seeing both in myself and others the same pattern that kept on creeping up over and over again. And that was, we work hard. We have the strategies. We kind of know how. We all know how to do the thing, which kind of leads to what you were talking about with why do I suck as an agent? I think it's important to really understand that and be self-reflective. We have all the information we need. Yep. We do. It's there. It always has been. If you want to get even a little more philosophical about it, all the information that ever has been and ever will be is 100% evenly present at all places at all time. And now, when you add AI to the mix, boy, it sure is in that way too. So it's
just there faster.
Yeah, and it's not a lack of information. But what I eventually realized is that strategy isn't the problem. Identity is. And you can see behind me, I'm not sure if you can, but identity before strategy. That's why I have that behind me for these podcasts, is because it really is about that. It is the sort of person I conceive myself to be will be how I show up in the world. There's no way around it. We could kick it around. We could throw it in the air and shine all the lights on it. At the end of the day, the dust will settle, and it is the self-image that's running the show. And that's the core, the through line of this program. So today, my work is centered around helping entrepreneurs and sales professionals upgrade the identity to match their results, so that confidence and consistency and follow through are all a natural byproduct of who they are, not just the things that they learn how to do in a book.
Yeah,
That's what this is all
outstanding.
about.
So you said you went from being a solo agent to building something bigger. What was the first internal block you had to break first?
In terms of growing the team?
Just, I guess maybe like for you, what was your internal block from growing? Because I think everybody has that growth moment where the best advice I ever got when I started, I went to my old broker and him and his brother were outstanding. They were both a broker. And I said, what should I expect for my first 2 years? And he didn't sugarcoat it. He said, you got to eat shit for 2 years and work your ass off. And to me, that was perfect because we have this scale, we have this image of what real estate agents think they look like without knowing what's behind the scenes. And for him to tell me that, I was like, okay, I know how to build a business. I built one before. I'm like, I'm just going with the mindset I got to build another business. And there's a lot that goes into that. So for me, that was my first block, was just, I'm going to have to work hard. There was no sugarcoating it with him. And he set the tone for me. And it took me 18 months. It didn't take me 2 years, but it took me about 18 months to actually feel like I could leave my W-2 job and break into this industry. And there was no looking back. But all the work I did those first 18 months are still paying me 8 years later, which is really cool.
That's really awesome. So thanks for sharing that story. That really helped me frame your question a little bit better. And if I really to look back at that moment, so as a solo agent, the first 7-8 years in the business, I was doing pretty good because I had a sales background, but I wasn't doing nearly as well as I could have. So I was really tired of the roller coaster ride and the up and down of that. And so what the biggest breakthrough I had to have was breaking through the fear associated with rejection, with picking up the phone. And that was huge for me. And I kept on seeing my peers around me in the office that weren't any smarter than I was, but yet they were performing better. I'd throw up 3 or 4 units and then I'd have 0, or I'd have 5 and I'd have 1. And this inconsistency was driving me mad. And I finally realized that there is only one thing that's keeping me from doing as well as I could, is that was the capacity to pick up the phone, make the calls, and have those conversations with folks that didn't otherwise want to talk with me, but yet influence them to take a path that's in their best interest. And that's what I did. So I finally decided to pick up the phone and start calling expireds and FSBOs. And my business literally went like this. So there's the hockey stick.
Yeah.
And in that, within the first 6 months, I think I went from, I think I was really topping out at around 6 or 7 million as a solo agent without an admin. So I hired my first assistant, started making calls, got at my own office. We went from 6 to 12 to 18 to 25 to 30 million, all very quickly by the result of that one decision. Just do it and do it consistently.
Do it. Yeah. And that's a lot of times I think this business is overcomplicated. And a lot of times it's like my broker just called Take Action Realty Group. I didn't do that it's a mindset thing. I didn't do that for everybody else. I did it because I was so sick of seeing people be hypocritical, myself included, of talking about all the things I wanted to do and say. And I figured if I named my company that, I had to do it. And so that was the reason why. So I have to stand behind that brand every single day to make sure that I never loop back into that. Now, in times I overcompensate sometimes, and that goes into my next question is why agents get stuck or stay stuck running from transaction to transaction instead of really building a business, because that was the mentality. I overcompensated, and then it was like, I just have to be transactional because and again, being a broker and a producer early on, and I'm still only 2.5 years into being a real estate broker, I still have to produce in order to pay the bills. But at times I get stuck just being transactional instead of actually building my business. So why do agents stay stuck instead of actually building a real business?
That's a really great question. These conversations, Monte, are really the most effective when the questions get right to the heart of the matter. So I appreciate that question. It might be the biggest one. Why do they stay stuck transactionally versus building a business? If you think about it, it's the beginning place of actually, first of all, realizing that this is a business and then conducting yourself as a business owner would. So you have to get,
Mhm.
the agent would have to first associate this industry, what we're doing, as a business and not just a solopreneur type of operation. And then secondarily, they would have to grow themselves in such a way that they earn the right to have the leverage associated with the business. I mean, you just to bring on an assistant, I took a massive responsibility there. Anybody that's ever taken that first step with your first assistant, I looked in their
Mhm.
eyes and I said, her name is Bobby. She's wonderful. I said, Bobby, here's what I was told. I was told that if I bring you on, you got to double my business in the first year. And I was just
Yeah.
repeating something I heard. And she says, or what? I said, or. And she's
Yeah,
like,
or I don't
"Geez."
want to say it.
Yeah. And so we literally did exactly double. But the point was that along the way, I understood that I needed leverage to be able to do more. We had a lot of business coming in. I couldn't do it myself. So that was the other thing. But it was a mindset shift. And not to sound trite or to keep on going back to that, but it is the crossover of saying, do I want a business, a true business? And so here's the crux of it. And this is where I think most agents might get this wrong, is if they really were to future pace this out to the end, whatever the end is, the end of their career, is do they really want to be the only one? Do they want to be the one that's literally tied to, we always talk about having a lockbox on our toe at our deathbed.
Mhm.
No, the answer has to be no. You know that to be true. And so the only way around that is to elevate ourselves in such a way that we earn the right to bring in leverage in our lives in the form of administrative assistants and agents that we can bring in to teach them to do the thing at our standard, or else we will forever be stuck on the hamster wheel. If you've ever been on vacation and trying to work a real estate transaction while also simultaneously trying to be a great dad and a great husband and being present, and it's
Mhm.
impossible to do that if you're the only one doing the thing. And the excuses will be extremely validated. They'll dig in. That's ego saying, hey, I'm the only one.
Yep.
That's all.
Yep.
That's just keeping yourself small. It
Yep.
really is. It's just a decision. It's
Yeah,
not
and
just a
it's funny.
decision.
You just brought that vacation part up. I just had my 20-year wedding anniversary 2 weeks ago. We went to Costa Rica, and I had 6 listings go live before I left, and I had 5 transactions that were closing within a day of me getting back from vacation. And my team handled it so well. I was so proud of them. It was the first time that I actually felt like I could turn off and know that something was happening. Now I had to step in on a few things. They had no idea what was going on, but something that where I would have worked half the time I was on vacation prior, I probably put in maybe 2 to 3 hours of work the whole week, which was phenomenal for me. And it was really good to know, okay, my team's there. I can release some of that, and it felt really good. So now it's okay. Now where do I go make myself busy? That's
Yeah, and that's awesome, man. And that's really great example, by the way. And with this leaner model that I have right now, until I turn my attention back to bringing agents back on the team, I brought my team down to I'm the solo producer right now in this in-between place I am. And I'm going to change that shortly, but I'm really glad to hear you shared that example. But that's really it, man. It's the decision to bring on leverage. I had a point there that's escaping me for a moment, and it'll come back to me. But imagine that, though, if you didn't have the team support behind you, what does that look like?
right. I would have been in Costa Rica working, which I guess is all right. But
Which is, I mean, if you're on the listing side, it's possible, right? I mean, you can have your toes in the water and your ass in the sand and still sell real estate, which is an amazing piece of this business on the listing side, because it is highly leveraged. You can pop in and pop out. You can't do that with buyers. And so I think that to go back to the core of your question, which is why do agents stay stuck, is because A, they haven't looked at it like a business. B, here's the point. Here's the bigger point is I really get very little satisfaction, believe it or not, from being at a closing. Not that I don't enjoy the interaction or the finality of it. For me, it's not where I say that my highest and best use of my time and energy and attention should be.
Sure.
And also, furthermore, as an example of how I've grown as a leader, me being at a closing table is not emblematic of that higher station. And a true, like, selling 80 units as an agent with single production says one thing, says you're an excellent salesperson, marketer, perhaps a negotiator. But to suggest that you have a team that sells, let's say, maybe 100 or 150, and you've trained other people to do it to your standards, and it's happening systematically, duplicatedly, repeatably, is a much higher degree of learning and sharing and growing, not only as a leader, but your example has been there to teach them how to do the same. That to me is several levels up on the ladder, and I'm way more excited about that than I am just selling houses.
For sure. Yeah. And so I still love the closing table myself. That's my favorite thing. One, we all get paid that day, but I just feel like for me on closing, it's like I've built this relationship with them now for sometimes over a year in the from the time I go, whether it's on a listing appointment, by the time they're ready to sell, and then actually getting the closing table. So I always feel like you said, the finality of it is something we have to be at. And I love that aspect of it, because that's like hey, if agents don't show up on closing day, then what does that say? So that's my mindset with that. But I agree with you. There's other ways it's not the best use of my time for sure. And I agree with you 100% on that. But I also feel like that's my final send off. That's my, hey, let's go. Yeah. But we do a pretty good job at our brokerage too, post close, with all the benefits and everything that we do with that, which we can talk about on a different podcast. But so we don't really lose sight of our clients at that point. Now, switching gears a little bit into that, and we talk about the mindset going into real estate. We brought that up earlier. Is agents say they want these six-figure things, and you're a big mindset guy, but then they do all the things that keep them broke. Again, they say they want things, and then they do all the broke things. So what's actually happening with those agents? Where's the disconnect from the six-figure life to the broke life?
Yeah. So in my program, Infinite You, it's several lessons. And one of them is on prosperity and money consciousness, essentially. So what I did was I built a program that has every lesson. If someone says, here's my challenge, I would say, hey, there's a lesson for that. And one of them is something that I've spent a lot of time on that. It took me months and months of research and application, also from my life experience, having grown up on the other side of the tracks. I know what it feels like to not have. And so I also know what it feels like to earn and to build and to save and to invest and to grow. And I also know what it feels like to feel lack. And I also know what it feels like to feel abundance. And so there's a crossover there. So why do people continue to do the things that keep them broke? Is because if you think about it, like having someone walk up to you with a briefcase of $1 million in it and hand it to you doesn't make you a millionaire. It makes you an individual with $1 million in a briefcase.
Right.
And so there has to be a crossover point where the individual begins to see themselves as somebody who is worthy of the money that they're holding. Because what happens is the self-image is a regulating mechanism, which means that there's a dial. Look at it like a thermostat. And we all have a money dial. And if you look at your income, if it goes up, then it drops. If you sustain it for a year and then it continues to plateau, it's because we have it set at a certain place. If your thermostat was set higher, then you, of course, would be able to sustain and hold that income and grow it. But at the end of the day, because our self-image seeks consistency, there's a wonderful book written by Maxwell Maltz called Psycho-Cybernetics. And in this book, it was my first realization that this is an actual thing in our lives. And he did it. A lot of his research was based on a teacher and a professor by the name of Prescott Leckie, who had an entire life study of works of children and college students in the area of self-image, and how he was able to help them alter their self-image. A lot of grade stuff, like there were E students and they ended up with A's by virtue of the way that he trained them out of thinking that they were stupid, essentially, and that they were actually intelligent. By virtue of that shift and altering the self-image thermostat, their grades magically, not so magically, shifted upward. So imagine that in the area of money and abundance and prosperity. And wouldn't one, if they believe themselves to be worthy of the potential income, I don't know what it is. Let's just throw it out. It doesn't matter. Most agents say they want to be millionaires, whatever. But
right.
In the beginning, they say they want to make $100,000 a year. That's usually the benchmark. I want to make $100,000.
Yep.
So let's just use that six-figure as the mark. And yet they keep on leveling off around 60 or 50, and maybe they're doing great for a month or two. You see it all the time. Why is real estate income's like a roller coaster ride? I experienced that. Maybe you did as well. What is underneath that? If they believed, if their image was set at such a place that they felt worthy of, and they actually were a $100,000 or a multi-million-dollar producer, their actions would flow naturally from that identity. So there's the identity piece. Underneath it all, that's what it is. We would then naturally show up and do the things that sort of person would do to have the income that person would have. If you run it through it's a be, do, have paradigm, and most people want to flip that around. Did I get to the heart of your question there?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing it does, when does that become subconscious? Because I think if we're always aware and we're always thinking about it, that'll drive us mad. But at some point, where does that behavior become just habitual?
Wow. Okay. So yes. First of all of this is, I mean, all of the programs are subconscious. I mean, it's if things were like brought to light, the awareness is such a huge piece. But when does it become something that's natural? It's by virtue of doing the deeper work. A self-image work is not work that you're going to learn about in school. It's a lot of psychiatrists aren't even really quite familiar with this. But the work itself is an alteration of the I am. It's like saying that my cup is filled with tea. I don't want tea in there. I want coffee in there. First of all, you have to dump the damn tea out and fill it up with coffee. But there has to be a departure from the individual where they are now. A decision needs to be made, first of all. If you think about a golf ball, and if you've ever sliced it by hacking, if you ever seen the inside of that, right? It's not meant to be sliced. They try to prevent that, right? But sometimes it happens, so you get how hard it is inside. So imagine the self-image is like the center of that ball. It's hard to get to, but if you manage to get it open, it doesn't want to come out, but it's protected. So imagine it like that. And so imagine that you have an image that supports a particular belief system, and everything is fashioned around that. So that means that everything that I'm taking in right now, I'm viewing the world through the lens of my paradigms, and then my self-image is the inside saying, this is the sort of person I am. Everything that is occurring must be consistent with that image. And so it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I have to be conscious of my current results. What are my results? Am I happy with those? And where do I want to go with my goals? And is my current image going to allow me to get there? If the answer is no, then doing that inner work is the job. I say something in my program all the time that each lesson I remind folks of constant spaced repetition, which is an idea repeated over and over again will eventually take hold. And the only way that we're going to change ourselves is the same way that, Monte, that we became who we are today. How did we become who we are today? You've heard the saying, give me the boy for 8 years and I'll show you the man. What the hell does that mean? Right?
Yeah.
Think about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
All that stuff is from programming from our first 7 year. Most of it is that. We've had experiences that after 7 years old, but most of it in our formative years really hammered this stuff into who we are, what we think about money, what we think is possible, who we believe we are, all of that. Most of it's fashioned right there in those first formative years. So if we got there in a certain way, we can use the same method to unravel that which is not serving us and rebuild ourselves in a way that's going to help support our most amazing goals.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's a lot right there. So I guess that part is, so apply that to like when an agent's failing, how do they dig themselves out of that? How can we apply that to that agent that feels that they suck at this point?
Yeah, dude, again, your questions are really great because what you're doing is you're bringing in the psychology, but then you're bridge the gap between that and the tactical, which is super helpful because otherwise we can just spend a lot of time over here in this.
Yeah, there's a lot of hypothetical and and
like if I said hey,
analytical,
man,
but let's take some action steps here to get our people unstuck.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad you asked that and there's a reason why my program is 12 lessons and it's a progression. So in other words, as you move through it, the very first lesson is called Your Life Targets, Goals Worth Trading Your Life For. And I worded it that way as a subtitle because it's important to realize that we're trading our life for everything we're doing. What we're giving our attention to is literally a trade-off of our time for our life. So what most agents don't have is they don't have what we call worthy ideals. That's an Earl Nightingale phrase, but I plugged it into my program because my mentor, Bob Proctor, the late Bob Proctor, taught me through a program that I was consulting with, which is called Thinking into Results, that these two goals, one for life, one for your personal life and one for business, are going to be your guiding lights. And so if you don't have these two big goals, one for personal, one for business, you're not going to get up in the morning and go after anything. You're not going to get after it in the way that you would if you had these big goals. And so first and foremost, why do agents suck? Because they're not setting goals big enough to get them fired up. Think about it. Said to you, hey, this year, 2026, I'm going to sell. Now, it's all subjective. So maybe for one agent, this is a big deal, but I'm going to sell 10 units. If you sold 7 last year, let's just use it as an example, is that 3 units going to get you fired up, excited? Does it scare you and simultaneously excite you? Does it require, more importantly though, does it require you to change and be a better version of yourself once you've arrived at 10 units? Or can you pretty much be the same person? So we know the answer to that. So that's the starting point, is that the goals are too small and they're not doing anything. They're not enacting anything inside of them. There's nothing visceral. They can stay the same. And so by virtue of that, they just don't follow through because there's no reason to do so. Now imagine if that was changed. Imagine if they said, if I asked them a very important question, which I do in my program, hey, what do you want? What do you mean what I want? No, what do you want? Okay, we can sit here all day long. Let's just talk about this for a minute. What do you want? And it's a weird question because that's not most people haven't gotten clear on that yet. So if they answer the question, what do they want? And then we can say, why do you want that? What's important to you about that? Because we have to unravel if it's bullshit or not, first of all. But let's just say they land on something. And then they start to go with, yeah, but I can't have that because of my age, because of my income. No, take that away. I'm not asking you how. I'm just asking you, what do you want? If we can land on it and it's true and real, and it's also super big in there, like it's meaningful is the key word here. Okay, now we have one for personal, we have one for business. Now we have these guiding lights, and we can, every day when we wake up, it should allow us to get up in the morning without an alarm clock because we're so fired up to go after them. That's a starting point. Okay, and then to bridge the gap there, then we have to then take the actions daily. There's that consistency piece in order to move towards those goals, which actually is a challenge because that's why lesson 2, 3, and 4 of my program get to the heart of the matter with paradigms, common denominator of success, and self-image alteration, because we suddenly realize we're face to face with this issue, which is, I don't believe that I'm worthy of those goals I just set. But how do you get through that? How do you gain confidence? You know the answer to that, Monte.
Yeah.
How are we gaining confidence? How do we get confident?
Experience and doing.
100%. So how do you get confident? You do. And by virtue of doing, your self-image is watching you going, wait a minute, this is not who we agreed we are. And you're like, yeah, it is. No, because we said we're here. Continue to do something every day and build in that repetition of this is who I am and this is what I'm going for. And at the end of the day, if your reasons are big enough, and we can do a test on this one, if your reasons are big enough, you will figure out a way. You will alter the self-image, you will adjust, you will filter the paradigms, and you will bust through walls for your family and those you love, and you know you would. Sometimes I do a weird test, which is like, hey, gun to the head, and it's weird. It's weird because there's people like, you're nuts. It gets to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? Gun to the head of someone you love right now, and you had 5 hours to get a listing. Would you do it? Do it. Then now that proves a point, doesn't it?
Right.
Although a sick one, it proves a point that we are willing and able to do anything as long as the meaning is big enough. That's the only point of that exercise, not to suggest that we're going to do that, but that they just admitted that given the right reason, they would take enough action to go out there in the world and put themselves in front of rejection to get that listing. And so that's how important it is to have that goal big enough, because then you'll do the same thing, but in a positive way. Doesn't require your loved ones to get their brains blown out to make it happen. See that?
Yeah.
So that's it. Something like that.
That's a good way to do it. All right. Now on to surviving for the next 3 years. So how does that's a great point though, because you're right. What do they call it? The Parkinson's law, right? Yeah. So you were just talking about Parkinson's law. Essentially, you set goals and they're too low because you can achieve them. But what if you that's what Grant Cardone lives off of, is the 10X rule, right? You set the goal 10 times out, and then if you achieve it 5X instead of 10X, you still were 5 times further than where you were before. So the same principle applies in all of this, which is awesome. And all of this is great. As we move into to close the episode out, we're getting to that point, and I should probably have you back on here in a couple of months and do another one, because I got through, I think, 3 of my 10 questions. So it's good. I mean, it's phenomenal. So last thing here, and you really touched on it, but for those people that are sitting in their car right now, they're struggling, they don't know if they should continue in this industry or not. What's the best advice right there from you?
Man, I think there's a moment where we've all had that thought. But the advice I'd give you is I think a lot of times we look at our businesses or real estate practices or anything we're doing really through the microscope, but we fail to look at it through the telescope.
Mm.
And so the microscope is what's happening right now. The telescope gives us that longer vision of what do I want? What am I doing this for?
What's out there?
And yeah, what's the purpose of this whole thing? If we can connect the dots between what this is going to do for our families, if you have a family, boy, I was on a run this morning, 8 miles, and I was processing a lot of things. And one of them was really in this groove of connecting the dots between what we're doing and how significant that is to allowing us to go to work and do the thing we do. I believe that work is important. I believe that what we're doing is important. I believe that clients now need, real estate clients need expert guidance more now than ever. And if we have the capacity to do that, and we can also simultaneously do it in a way that supports our financial goals, allows us to live the life that we really want. And we can't do that in real estate. That's a huge opportunity there. And so I would say push it out, look at what I really want, and then bridge the gap between that and right now. And so just because you haven't done the thing that you needed to do thus far to be where you want to be, it doesn't matter. It's literally a matter of what you're focusing on right now. So run it through this filter. There's this one last thing I'll tell you about this is we're making 3 decisions at every moment. And I use this as a guide for most of the things I'm doing, is you're deciding what I'm going to focus on. In other words, what I'm giving my attention to. So what are you focusing on? What are you focusing on? And then secondarily, what meaning are you giving that? So if you're focusing on your lack of sales, your lack of closings, your bank account, dismal balance in your account, that's what you're focusing on. And then secondarily, what meaning are you giving that? Now, you could easily, the good news is that we have the capacity as humans with brains that can pivot to a better thought and a better focus. You can shift that right now and decide that you want to focus on serving. That and leveling up and getting better and improving, and you want to focus on building a lifestyle for your family and supporting, and then ultimately at the end of all this thing you're doing it so well that you're able to give back. So use the telescope. Microscope is good too, because it tells you what's going on day to day, but really cast it out there and really decide what you want, because then it's going to allow you to take action every single day. There's a little bit on that, but that's what I would tell you right now.
Love it. Good. So tell people about Infinite You. What is it? Who's it for? I mean, you've alluded to it a few times during the podcast, but yeah, it's your time now.
Yeah. I'll tell you. So it's 12 lessons. They're not random topics. They're 12 stages of entrepreneurial becoming. And I shared with you that it starts off with setting massively inspiring goals, and then it moves through the process of removing these internal barriers. I brought up the word paradigms. That's the lens through which we're viewing the world. Right now, everyone is watching or listening to this, they're running this conversation through the filter of their existing paradigms. It's going to serve them or not serve them. Unfortunately, with paradigms is that great information that comes in, and I believe this is a great conversation today, and because you've asked really great questions, Monte, so thank you.
Good.
But things bounce off of us if it doesn't fit the current paradigm, because it rejects what we're learning. That's why some people learn things and some people do not. The same information. So working through those internal barriers, emotional alignment with the future they want, realizing that if I set a goal, which we do, that we have these internal barriers that are going to keep us stuck where we are, and then moving into attitude adjustment. Believe it or not, our attitudes are shaping the way that we think, feel, and act. Expanding prosperity consciousness, improving execution in sales and influence, and then getting back. Ultimately, at the end of this, we're coming through, it's an evolution where we've worked on ourselves, done the internal work, worked on sales and influence, worked on prosperity consciousness, wealth and abundance and prosperity, which is essentially, I'm teaching you how to bring so much value to the marketplace that your income is going to be supportive of that, because that's what happens when you bring value. And at the end, we round it out with a final lesson called the impression of increase, which is leaving the world better off than you found it. And there's no better gift than to be able to work on yourself so much that the cup spills over and you've got so much to share, which is exactly why I started this entire process to begin with. If you want to learn more about that, we're launching Infinite You. We have a target launch date of mid-June, so just about 2 weeks out, and it's called infiniteu.com with a letter U. And if anybody is really, this is resonating with you, there's a reason for it. This is not a sales pitch. Just realize that there's a reason why it's resonating. If it's not, then just ignore what we're talking about and go back to what we're doing.
Exactly.
If, especially the area of the self-image, I have found that most people, for some reason, they're less inclined to learn about goals. Not sure what the reason is, other than they aren't setting them, and that hurts them inside to realize that. But the self-image, if you want to learn more about that, go to self-image or yournextimage.com. Yournextimage.com. That'll bring you right to a page I created with a video, a little player that shows you about learning about the self-image. Yournextimage.com and infiniteu.com.
Outstanding. So where else can people find you, Kevin?
I mean, you just Google. I mean, we've got the Yoder Real Estate side, which is my real estate company. But you can find us on at Infinite You by Kevin, both on YouTube at Infinite You by Kevin, and also on Facebook through that same handle, also Instagram. So all three of them are at Infinite You by Kevin.
Nice. And which part of the country are you in?
I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Love it. Good. Now I have a referring agent in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So anybody listening, send them out to Kevin. I love it. So guys, thank you so much, Kevin, for coming on. This has been phenomenal. Like I said, I think we could have probably went hours on this one.
Yeah, we could.
Because
Absolutely.
it really is the base in the essence of this podcast. And you guys, if this was a hit, share it with somebody who needs it. New episodes every week. I'm Monte Reyment. This was Kevin Yoder. And this was the Why Do I Suck as a Real Estate Agent podcast. Kevin, thanks again for coming on, man.
Thank you, Monty. Appreciate you, man. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to doing this again with you sometime. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you.
So that's a wrap here on the Why Do I Suck as a Real Estate Agent podcast. Thank you so much for spending time with me and our guests. The people you hear on this show really aren't guessing. They've been doing the work. They've been doing it for a long time. They're sharing their behaviors, their habits, their successes, their systems that actually lead to real work, real success. So please subscribe and follow so you don't miss the next conversation. Until next time, remember, you don't suck. You're learning. It's the beginning, or maybe you're in a rut, but you don't suck. So make a few changes, stay curious, stay consistent, and please keep coming back.